The morning began like any other, with people rushing to work, children preparing for school, and screens glowing with ordinary news. No one knew that within a few hours, the entire planet would be staring upward, holding its breath, wondering if this was the last normal morning they would ever see far above the clouds. Inside Earth's main defense command, an operator noticed something odd on the long-range monitor. At first, he thought it was a glitch, just a cluster of dots flickering where nothing should be. But the dots grew brighter, sharper, and multiplied in seconds. He leaned forward, unsure if he should call a supervisor or check the system again. After a few moments, he chose the safest option. He alerted the floor dot. The alert spread like a shockwave. Officers hurried from one station to another, sharing the same message. Something was entering the solar system. Not a meteor shower, not a drill. Something organized, moving with purpose. Within minutes, the entire command room shifted from routine calm to controlled tension. Every station lit up. Data streams updated faster than anyone could read. The person overseeing the floor known simply as the commander, a leader respected for calm judgment, stepped toward the main screen. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't panic. He just stared at the formation, approaching the outer planets. Even though the shapes were still distant, he could feel that this was not random space debris. It was a fleet dot. He gave the order for a full planetary alert. Sirens did not echo across cities. Earth's systems were much more subtle. Phones buzzed, emergency messages appeared on screens, and broadcasts paused. News anchors stared into cameras with pale faces, trying to remain professional as they read the information streaming in. People everywhere stopped what they were doing. No one truly understood what the alert meant at first. They only knew this had never happened before. In the skies above major defense bases, protective barriers shimmered faintly as they activated. Orbital satellites realigned themselves, swiveling their sensors toward the unknown fleet. From space, Earth suddenly looked awake, alive with movement, lights, and signals. It was as if the planet itself had taken a deep breath, bracing for whatever was coming. Civilians across the world watched the live coverage with fear and confusion. Some thought it was an accident. Others believed it was a false alarm. But soon, the cameras broadcast something that removed all doubt. A distant image, pixelated and unclear, of several dark shapes moving together, entering the inner solar system. They were huge, far bigger than anything humans had ever built. Airports halted flights. Highways slowed as people checked their phones again and again. Messages filled group chats with questions no one could answer. Is this real? Who are they? Are we ready? Inside command, the staff worked quickly, analyzing every movement of the approaching fleet. The commander asked for a full report. The fleet was large, larger than anything they had predicted could appear so suddenly. There was no communication coming from them, no signals of peace or warning. Just silence, heavy and unsettling. Earth's defensive system had been built over decades, mostly as a precaution. Many believed it would never be used. It included satellite cannons designed to disable threats, shield arrays to create protective barriers, and platforms that could intercept objects entering orbit. But until this moment, everything had been theoretical. The commander made the decision no one ever wanted to make. He activated Earth's defense grid. In the orbit above the planet, massive metal structures hummed to life. Lights flashed across the panels. Protective screens unfolded. Energy gathered in systems that had never fired in real conflict before. Space was quiet, but the tension was loud. Meanwhile, families sat together in their homes, watching the news in silence. Some hugged each other. Some prayed. Others simply stared, unable to understand how the world had changed so quickly. Children asked questions their parents didn't know how to answer. The uncertainty weighed heavily on everyone, pressing down like invisible air. As the fleet moved closer, Earth's sensors detected more details. The ships were arranged with strict formation and moved at extraordinary speed. Their surfaces reflected no light, giving them an eerie shadow-like appearance. They were unlike anything recorded before. Scientists in different countries argued over possibilities, but none of them mattered. The fleet kept coming. News commentators tried to remain calm, but viewers could hear the tremble in their voices. Experts joined the broadcasts, offering theories no one fully believed. Some people thought the fleet was here to make contact. Others believed it was a military force. The world was divided between hope and fear, but deep down, most sensed it was something serious. The commander watched the live feed as the ships crossed a major boundary line, one that Earth had marked as a defensive zone. If the fleet continued without sending a signal, Earth would have to treat it as a threat. He gave one last warning through all communication channels, broadcasting in every frequency humans knew, a request to identify themselves. The fleet did not respond. Minutes felt like hours. The silence felt heavier than any sound. The first ships crossed into the final approach path. Their formation tightened, suggesting intention rather than accidental drift. The commander, with steady voice and heavy heart, approved the next step: prepare for defensive engagement. He did not say the word battle. He didn't need to. Operators across the room tapped commands, confirmed coordinates, and locked in target data. Every system synced perfectly, like an orchestra tuning up before a performance no one wanted to hear. Down on Earth, people watched maps and simulations flash on screens. They saw icons representing the unknown ships inch closer. Social feeds exploded with panic and speculation, but there was nowhere to run. This was not a threat to a single country. It belonged to the entire planet out above. Earth's defensive platforms began tracking individual ships. Even from a distance, the sheer size of the approaching fleet made Earth's forces look small. The commander knew this and felt it in his chest. He had always hoped humanity would meet other life with open communication, not fear and conflict. But right now, they had no information, no negotiation, no signal. Only silence from a force moving straight toward the planet. The moment came when the first alien ship entered Earth's immediate defense perimeter. Lights across the command room turned from orange to red. Systems confirmed. Unidentified fleet entering critical zone. No communication detected. The commander hesitated for the smallest second. A moment that felt like the entire world was balanced on the edge of a knife. Then he gave the order that would change history. Activate first response protocol. Earth's defense network began to charge its systems, preparing to fire if absolutely necessary. No weapons launched yet, but everything was ready. The tension in the room was thick enough to feel in the air. Everyone knew they had crossed a line. There was no turning back. On the ground, people felt an unease that words couldn't describe. They didn't know the details, but they sensed something serious was happening. The world grew quiet. Streets emptied. Screens took over as the center of attention. For the first time in history, the entire planet watched the same event at the same time, united by fear and hope. Just as the systems reached full readiness, something unexpected happened. The alien fleet shifted its formation. It wasn't a retreat, but a change, almost like they were preparing for something too. The sensors showed a burst of energy from the largest ship. Earth's operators froze. No one knew if this was a message, a weapon, or simply a technical adjustment. The commander stood still, waiting for more data. But before his analysts could confirm anything, the system issued its automatic alert. Unidentified energy surge. The moment felt unreal. The operators looked at one another, unsure of what the surge meant. Civilians had no idea what was happening, only that the news anchors were suddenly speechless. And above Earth, the sky began to fill with light. Not fire, not explosions. Just a strange, bright glow as the fleet continued its silent approach. No one on the planet knew what the next few minutes would bring. But every person, every family, every worker, every child felt the same thing deep inside. The world had changed forever. The glow around the alien fleet grew brighter as it moved closer, and Earth's Defense Command watched every shift with rising concern. No one in the room spoke unless absolutely needed. The commander stood with his hands behind his back, staring quietly at the main display. He didn't want a battle. No one did. But he also knew he couldn't allow the fleet to move any closer without understanding its intentions. Around him, operators whispered updates in shaky voices. Every piece of data came in two fast energy spikes, formation changes, strange signals that didn't match any known pattern. Scientists connected through secure links tried to make sense of the readings. Some thought the glow was a shield. Others thought it was a drive system. No theory lasted more than a few minutes, because the alien ships kept changing their behavior, as if reacting to Earth's own movements. Down on the planet, people stayed glued to screens. Some stood outside even though the ships couldn't be seen from the ground. They looked up anyway, imagining what was happening above, feeling the weight of the moment. Online comments were filled with fear, but also hope. Maybe the fleet wasn't hostile. Maybe they simply didn't know how to communicate. Everyone wanted to believe that, but no one could be sure. Earth's military jets rose from bases around the world, forming patrol lines just inside the atmosphere. They couldn't reach the alien ships, but their presence comforted people watching from below. It was a reminder that humanity wasn't helpless, that it still had control over its own sky. Inside command, the tension grew as the reports turned more urgent. The alien ships had begun releasing smaller crafts fast-moving, needle-shaped objects that spread out like scouting units. Earth sensors attempted to track them all, but there were too many. One operator swallowed hard as he announced that several of the small crafts were heading directly toward Earth's defense platforms in orbit. The commander asked if the crafts were armed. The operator shook his head, no clear sign of weapons. But that didn't mean they were harmless. The commander hesitated only a moment. Then he ordered all platforms to raise shields to maximum strength. Out in space, massive rings of energy shimmered around Earth's defense stations. Some shields flickered slightly older systems, struggling to handle the sudden surge of power, but overall, the grid held firm. The scouting crafts continued forward, ignoring the warnings broadcast in every frequency Earth knew. They moved smoothly, almost gracefully, without any sign of aggression. But they didn't slow down. They didn't change course. They didn't answer messages at the last possible moment. Just as one of the crafts passed dangerously close to a defense platform, the platform's automatic system reacted. It fired a low-power pulse meant to disable electronics, not destroy anything. Sparks of blue light danced along the small craft's surface as the pulse hit. The craft spun slightly, but then steadied itself, still moving. That was enough to change everything. The alien fleet shifted again, this time much more sharply. Sensors detected a rapid buildup of energy inside multiple ships. It was too strong to be a simple communication system. It was something else. Something dangerous. The commander realized the situation had changed from uncertainty to near conflict. He gave the order to prepare defensive fire. Operators typed commands quickly, hands trembling. Warning klaxons filled the room in short bursts, more annoying than frightening, but impossible to ignore. Down below, news channels struggled to keep up with the flow of information. Viewers watched red bars flash across their screens, announcing that Earth's defense platforms might need to engage. Reporters tried to speak calmly, but their voices cracked. Families held hands. Some cried silently. The planet was now seconds away from a battle no one had ever imagined. In orbit, Earth's first line of defense prepared its weapons. High-energy pulses, ion beams designed to disable engines, and kinetic projectiles that fired like silent arrows through space. The systems didn't power up instantly. They hummed, warmed, and glowed with increasing intensity. The alien ships reacted in their own way. A ripple passed through their formation, like a wave moving from ship to ship. Their glow intensified. The fleet arranged itself into a tighter battle line. The commander tried one last time to communicate. He sent a message in the simplest possible format: mathematical pulses, the kind used by scientists to communicate across species boundaries. Still no response. The alien fleet accelerated. That was the final signal. Earth's first volley fired from 3 defense platforms at once. The beams shot across space like thin, bright threads, cutting through the darkness. The alien ships, surprisingly fast for their size, attempted to shift, but the beams struck several directly. The beams didn't cause explosions the weapons were designed to disable, not destroy. But sparks and clouds of fragments burst from the ships struck, showing the impact was real. Then the alien fleet responded with their own attack. A storm of glowing projectiles shot from the larger ships, hundreds of them. They moved like streaks of white light, silent but deadly. Earth's defense platforms activated their shields just in time. The projectiles crashed into the barriers, creating waves of light that rippled across the shield surface. Inside the platform control rooms, operators felt the rumble of the impact even through layers of metal. They shouted updates, warning that the shields couldn't take repeated hits like that. Earth fired again, this time from more platforms, creating a web of beams trying to slow the enemy advance. The alien fleet dodged skillfully, but not perfectly. Several ships were hit again, forced out of formation. The battle escalated quickly. Space lit up with bursts of energy and trails of fireless explosions. One of Earth's platforms took a direct hit, lost half its shield strength. Another platform's sensors went offline after a burst of radiation swept across it. Yet still, the defense forces held the line. The human jets in the upper atmosphere could do nothing but watch. They weren't yet able to join the fight. But the pilots stayed ready, waiting for orders, knowing they might be called to intercept debris or protect the ground from falling wreckage. The commander watched as the alien fleet pushed forward. He feared that if the aliens got past the platforms, they might reach the planet. He couldn't allow that. He authorized the next phase activate the kinetic launchers. Huge rods of dense metal launched from the platforms, speeding through space at incredible velocity. They didn't glow, didn't pulse, they simply moved, silent and deadly. A few hit their targets, punching holes through alien hulls. Some ships cracked open, spilling strange mechanical parts into space. Others veered off course entirely, but the alien fleet still wasn't stopping. They kept moving, determined, focusing their fire on the platforms blocking their path. One platform, Station 7, took a critical hit. A bright flash whipped through its midsection. Alarms blared inside as the crew evacuated to escape pods. Moments later, the station broke apart. Drifting in silence, Earth had lost its first major defense outpost. People on the ground gasped as the news broke. The screens didn't show the explosion, only a simple graphic of the platform turning gray. But the meaning was clear enough. Earth's shield was breaking. The commander knew he had no choice. He ordered the activation of the kill zone trap, a desperate strategy created only for worst-case scenarios. Several platforms powered down sections of their shields, making themselves appear vulnerable. It was a risky move. The idea was to lure the alien fleet into a specific region filled with hidden energy mines and crossfire cannons. If the aliens entered the zone, Earth could strike with overwhelming force. The aliens took the bait. They pushed forward, chasing the weakened platforms. Their formation tightened as they moved together through the center of the zone. The commander gave the signal dot in a split second. Dozens of hidden systems came alive. Mines detonated in bursts of blue light. Crossfire beams shot from multiple angles. The trap collapsed like a cage around the alien fleet. Some alien ships spun wildly, losing control. Others shattered completely. A blinding flash filled the region, lighting up the night side of Earth below. The fleet, once massive and intimidating, began to fall apart. Earth's forces didn't let up. They kept firing until sensors confirmed most of the alien ships were disabled or drifting. The battle lasted hours. But in the final moments, Earth delivered a final coordinated strike that shattered the last of the active alien warships. The screens inside command showed only debris and fading lights. The alien fleet had been defeated. On Earth, cheers broke out. People hugged each other. Some cried with relief. News anchors announced the victory with trembling smiles. But in the command room, the commander didn't smile. He stared quietly at the rubble drifting through space, thinking of the defense platforms lost, the people missing, and the question that troubled him from the beginning. Why had the fleet come? Earth had won the battle, but the silence that followed felt heavier than ever. When the battle finally ended, the sky above Earth looked calm again, but the calm was only on the surface. For people watching from the ground, the news channels repeated the same message again and again. The alien fleet had been crushed. Earth had won. Humanity was safe. Those words made everyone feel lighter for a moment, but no one truly understood what had happened above their heads. And no one understood what had been lost. Inside the planet's defense command, the atmosphere was completely different. There were no cheers, no celebration, only silence mixed with the sound of hurried footsteps and urgent discussions. Operators moved from station to station, checking damage reports, searching for missing crew, and trying to restore broken systems. The screens around the room flickered with warnings, some in red, some in yellow, none of them good. The commander stood near the main display, his eyes fixed on the pieces of destroyed platforms drifting in orbit. He knew each piece meant someone was hurt, lost, or missing. The battle had been won, yes, but the cost was already much higher than anyone expected. One operator approached with a trembling voice and said several defense platforms were not responding at all. They weren't just damaged, they were gone. Another operator added that multiple orbital habitats, places where engineers and families lived while maintaining space systems, had gone completely silent. Their signals had vanished during the battle. No one knew yet if the people inside were safe or trapped, or worse, emergency teams were already being sent out. But reaching those locations would take time. Some areas were too filled with debris to cross safely. The commander listened, nodding slowly, his jaw tight. He didn't interrupt. He simply took in every report, one by one, letting the numbers sink in. Missing personnel, destroyed equipment, broken stations, damaged satellites. Hundreds of systems had been hit in just a few hours. Down on Earth, people were trying to return to life as normal, but it wasn't so easy. Many cities experienced communication problems. Calls dropped. Internet links failed. Screens froze. Transport lines slowed. In several places, the power flickered on and off. At first, people thought it was just overload from the emergency broadcasts. But at WASN, single quotes T. Scientists soon noticed something worrying. When the alien ships exploded or broke apart, they released a kind of radiation Earth had never recorded before. It wasn't deadly to humans on the ground, but it was spreading through the upper atmosphere. It disrupted signals, weakened satellite networks, and created unpredictable waves of interference. And no one knew how long it would last. It might fade in hours, or it might linger for years. Researchers worked nonstop, staring at confusing readings that made no sense. Some tried to calm the government by saying the radiation might settle on its own. Others warned that if it grew stronger, it could damage communication and weather systems around the globe. The world depended on satellites for everything: navigation, electricity grids, emergency services. Losing them would create global chaos, but the biggest concern came from the medical teams, monitoring the defense personnel who survived the battle. Some of them reported unusual symptoms: headaches, dizziness, confusion that didn't match simple exhaustion. They suspected exposure to the same strange radiation. None of the symptoms were severe, but they were worrying. If the radiation affected humans even slightly, no one knew what the long-term effects could be. The commander received message after message from teams trying to report on these issues. Each update added another layer of weight to his already burdened mind. The fleet was gone, but the consequences were still growing. While the world watched the victory broadcasts, the commander entered a private analysis room with a small group of specialists. They had recovered fragments of alien technology floating among the debris. The pieces were strange smooth surfaces with patterns that shifted like liquid, materials that were impossible to identify. Engineers tried to study them, but the closer they looked, the more questions they found. The fragments didn't seem like parts of a war machine. Some pieces looked like data storage. Others resembled scientific equipment. A few had markings that suggested communication tools. It was confusing. If the fleet had come to attack Earth, why would they bring so many non-military objects? One analyst, an older scientist with decades of experience, stepped forward with a pale face. He explained that he had found something odd in one of the fragments. It wasn't a weapon system or navigation code. It was something else, something that looked like a distress pattern. The room fell silent as he continued. According to the data he recovered, the alien fleet was already damaged long before reaching Earth. Their energy levels were low. Their engines had been strained for long periods. They were traveling with signs of previous battle damage. It was almost as if they had been running from something. The commander asked if the data was certain. The scientist nodded. His hands shook slightly as he shared the results. The alien ships did not come in perfect condition. In fact, some of their structures suggested they had been patched or repaired in a hurry. Their power cores showed signs of instability. And several ships didn't have full weapon systems. They had been modified, almost like they were preparing for a long escape. Another analyst joined in and said some fragments contained encrypted communication logs. They weren't decoded yet, but the structure of the logs hinted that the fleet had sent signals before entering the solar system, signals not meant for attack, but possibly for caution or negotiation. This information made the commander's stomach tighten. He suddenly felt as if the room was colder. If the fleet wasn't attacking, then what exactly had happened? The group continued studying the fragments. Hours passed. The sun rose on the other side of the planet, but no one inside the command room noticed. They were too focused on the alien data, trying to understand the truth buried in the broken pieces. By midday, they uncovered more. One fragment contained a sequence that looked like a star map. The map showed multiple systems marked with warning symbols. Their symbols were different from human ones, but the meaning seemed clear. Many of the stars in the map had lines drawn through them. Destroyed systems. Lost homes. Each line represented a place that was no longer safe. One system had a double, mark a symbol that likely meant danger on a massive scale. That system was near the direction the alien fleet had come from. The commander stared at the map for a long time. His heart felt heavy. It wasn't the weight of guilt yet, but something close to it. The team finally reached a conclusion that made everyone in the room go quiet. All signs pointed to the same possibility. The fleet might not have been an invasion force at all. They might have been fleeing from something far worse. heading toward Earth either to seek help, warn humanity, or disable Earth's weapons if they believed humans could become a threat to whatever destroyed their home. The commander felt a sinking feeling in his chest. He thought back to the moment he had given the order to fire. He did it to protect the planet. Any leader would have made the same choice with the information available. But now he wondered what the aliens had been trying to do when they glowed, when they shifted, when they reacted to the defensive pulse. Were they trying to communicate? Were they scared? Were they desperate? He didn't say anything to the team. They already knew the question on his mind. Meanwhile, governments around the world held emergency meetings. Official statements to the public remained simple. Earth was safe, the threat was gone, and recovery operations were underway. But behind closed doors, leaders argued fiercely. Some wanted to reveal the truth, that the aliens may not have been attackers. Others said revealing it would cause panic, confusion, or blame. For now, they agreed to keep the information quiet until they understood more. Outside, life began returning to normal, but the atmosphere was very different. Some people celebrated the victory. Others felt strange unease, sensing that something wasn't being told. The communication problems grew worse in some regions, causing frustration and fear. Emergency teams struggled to repair damaged satellites, but the unusual radiation made everything harder. Families of missing defense workers waited for news, their hearts heavy with uncertainty. And high above them, broken pieces of alien ships and destroyed platforms floated silently, like reminders of a battle that ended but didn't truly answer anything. The commander walked out of the analysis room, pausing for a moment to look up at the ceiling, though his eyes were imagining the sky above. He knew the truth was only beginning to unfold. The fleet was gone, but the consequences were only growing. Earth had survived the battle. But the real cost was just starting to show itself through the silence of destroyed stations, the strange radiation drifting in the atmosphere, and the unsettling idea that the aliens might have come with warnings instead of weapons. And if they were running from something, whatever they were fleeing might still be out there. The days after the battle passed in a strange mix of relief and tension. People went back to work, schools reopened, and life seemed normal on the surface. But underneath, the planet was unsettled. Governments, scientists, and military leaders worked nonstop, trying to understand what had just happened. The commander spent almost every hour in meetings, studying the fragments of alien technology and the strange radiation that still lingered in the upper atmosphere. Every report he received made him feel more uneasy. The alien fleet had been destroyed, or at least most of it, but the fragments they left behind held clues that refused to make sense at first. Some pieces were simple debris, melted or cracked from the battle. Others glowed faintly, humming in patterns that the analysts had never seen before. At first, the team thought these objects were only advanced electronics. But as they examined them, they realized some of the pieces seemed to be transmitting information, even without being connected to a power source. It was almost as if the fleet had left messages behind, waiting for someone to find them. The commander gathered a team of the best analysts, linguists, and scientists to study the fragments. They worked in shifts, poring over every detail. Slowly, a picture began to form. The fleet had not been a typical military force. Their weapon systems were not fully operational. Many of their hulls had been patched and repaired multiple times. Some ships were missing key parts that would have made them effective in combat. Instead, the ships carried strange equipment that appeared to be for scanning, data collection, and communication. It was then that a breakthrough came. One of the scientists decrypted a small data fragment and discovered what looked like a log of messages. At first, the messages were indecipherable, just patterns of symbols that no one could understand. But after several hours, a readable translation emerged. It revealed something that made the room fall silent. The fleet had not intended to attack Earth. They had been fleeing. They had been running from a force far stronger than themselves, something that had already destroyed much of their home system. The commander felt a chill in his chest. It was the first real hint of the truth. The fleet had entered the solar system not to conquer, but to seek help, or at least a safe place to avoid whatever had destroyed their civilization. They had known Earth had weapons, but it seemed they had hoped humanity would not react with immediate hostility. They may have tried to signal this, but no one had understood. The realization weighed heavily on the team. Every destroyed alien ship, every lost fragment of life from the fleet, was the result of a misunderstanding. The commander had acted to protect the planet, as anyone would, but now the thought lingered in his mind. What if humanity had destroyed the only beings who might have warned them about a much greater danger? Meanwhile, the radiation in the upper atmosphere continued to disrupt satellite signals and communication systems. It slowed the work of both civilian and military teams trying to recover from the battle. Scientists studied the radiation closely, tracing its origin to several ships that had broken apart. Unlike conventional radiation, this one didn't burn or injure people directly. Instead, it interfered with electronics and caused unpredictable malfunctions. Satellites flickered in and out of contact. Navigation systems went offline in some regions, and power grids experienced irregularities. The world began to understand that victory had a hidden cost. On the ground, people struggled with subtle changes they didn't fully understand. Airplanes occasionally lost contact with ground control for a few seconds. Phone networks had brief outages. Farmers reported small changes in weather patterns in certain areas. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to remind everyone that the battle above had affected the planet in ways they couldn't see. The commander also received reports from military crews who had survived the battle in orbit. They were exhausted, some injured, and all shaken by what they had seen. They spoke of the alien fleet with a mix of fear and respect. The ships had moved with precision, even under damage, and the crews had sensed intelligence in every maneuver. Many of the humans who fought in the battle felt a strange sorrow. They had destroyed an entire civilization, or so it seemed, without fully knowing what they were doing. Governments debated how much to reveal to the public. Some argued that revealing the truth could cause panic. Others believed that humanity had a right to know that the aliens might have been fleeing a greater threat. For now, the official story remained simple. Earth had defended itself successfully, and the planet was safe. Behind closed doors, however, officials worked with the commander to analyze the recovered fragments and plan for potential future encounters. One afternoon, the commander received an encrypted message from an international research team. They had managed to recover a complete segment of alien communication that described their mission before entering the solar system. The translation was fragmented, but enough to paint a grim picture. The aliens' home system had been destroyed by a massive force, far stronger than anything humans had encountered. Entire planets had been wiped out. The fleet had been survivors, moving from system to system in search of safety. They had hoped to avoid conflict with Earth, perhaps even to find allies or warnings that could help them continue. The revelation made the commander's stomach tighten. The humans had acted as they always would in a defensive situation, but in doing so, they may have destroyed the very beings who could have provided critical knowledge about a threat that had already destroyed an entire civilization. The thought was heavy, almost suffocating. He knew that history would call this a victory, but in the quiet moments, he could not shake the feeling that they had made a tragic mistake. Analysts continued to study the fragments. Some pieces revealed maps showing star systems marked with warnings and paths that the fleet had traveled. Several systems were marked with symbols indicating destroyed planets or lost colonies. It was clear that the aliens had been on a desperate journey, trying to survive. They had entered the solar system not to attack, but because they needed a temporary refuge, or at least a chance to communicate. The more the team learned, the more complicated the situation became. Humans had won the battle in a technical sense, but the cost was not just material. It was moral, emotional, and potentially strategic. The fleet had been destroyed before any real communication could occur, leaving only fragments and silence. The commander struggled to accept that the very action meant to protect humanity may have removed the only warning about a much greater danger lurking in the galaxy. Meanwhile, civilian life carried on, largely unaware of the full truth. People returned to their routines, although many noticed small anomalies caused by the lingering radiation. Communication delays, minor weather disruptions, occasional power surges. Emergency teams worked to repair damaged satellites and platforms, but recovery was slow. The cost of the battle was becoming clear in practical ways that affected everyone, even if they did not understand it. The commander spent long hours reviewing every report. He spoke with scientists about the radiation, engineers about the fragments, military personnel about surviving stations. Each discussion brought new details, but the main question remained: what had the fleet really want? And what threat were they fleeing from? For the first time, the commander began to feel the heavy weight of responsibility beyond the battle itself. Earth had survived, but the decision to fire had consequences that no one could fully measure yet. He wondered if the world would ever know the truth. He wondered if humanity had destroyed its only chance to prepare for the unknown force that had already destroyed another civilization. Late at night, he walked alone in the command complex, looking up at the stars. The sky seemed calm and quiet, but he knew it was not. Somewhere in the universe, a force had destroyed everything the aliens had known. That same force might still be out there, and now Earth had no warning but fragments of a destroyed fleet. The thought was terrifying. The days passed, and slowly the commander began to plan. Humanity needed to learn from the fragments, from the maps, from the messages left behind. Scientists, engineers, and analysts would need to work together to understand what the aliens had tried to communicate. There was no time for celebration. There was only the task of understanding, preparing, and hoping that humanity could be ready for what might come next. And so, even though the planet celebrated its victory, the true cost remained unseen. Lives had been lost in orbit, platforms had been destroyed, satellites disrupted, and a chance to understand a larger danger had been lost. The commander knew that the real story of the battle was not victory. It was the silence, the questions, and the shadow of the threat that still lingered beyond the stars. The fragments of the alien fleet lay in orbit, quiet but full of information, waiting for human minds to understand. The commander looked at them and understood one thing clearly: the battle had ended, but the challenge for humanity was only beginning. The fleet had been destroyed, but its story was not over. And whatever force had chased the aliens across the galaxy might be coming next, humanity had survived a great test. But survival was only the first step. The next step would be understanding, preparation, and facing the unknown with courage. And the commander knew, deep in his heart, that end. The world had survived the battle, but it was a quiet, uneasy victory. Life on the surface tried to return to normal. Streets filled again, schools reopened, and people went back to their routines. News channels spoke of rebuilding, recovery, and resilience. Yet the people who had been in the command centers, the engineers in orbit, and the scientists studying the alien fragments knew the truth: nothing would ever be the same. Earth had faced a test unlike any before, and it had survived, but at a cost that no one could ignore. The commander moved through the command center early in the morning, reviewing reports that had come in overnight. The orbital defense platforms were being repaired, but some were lost forever. Satellites that had provided navigation, Communication and weather information had been damaged, some irreparably. Even after the battle ended, the radiation lingering from the alien fleet continued to disrupt signals. Small pockets of the world experienced outages and communication delays. While scientists worked tirelessly to understand the strange energy dot down on the planet, families of the lost and missing continued to wait for news. Rescue and recovery teams scoured orbit and the edges of the solar system, but many bodies and platforms were gone, drifting silently among the stars. Those left behind carried grief quietly, their celebrations muted by the emptiness left in orbit. Children asked questions about heroes who would never return, and parents struggled to find answers that felt adequate. Humanity had won a battle, but the shadow of loss was clear in every home affected. Inside the command center, the commander focused on the alien fragments. Analysts had decrypted more of the fleet's data, slowly revealing a tragic story of a civilization running from a force far more powerful than anything humans had seen. The fleet had been survivors, not warriors. Their ships carried messages, star maps, and warnings, but the battle had destroyed most of them before humanity could understand. Pieces of their civilization now floated in orbit, silent and broken, yet still holding fragments of knowledge. Waiting to be uncovered, scientists began to piece together maps showing the path of the alien fleet. Lines connecting destroyed systems, marked with symbols indicating danger, pointed toward unknown areas of the galaxy. The fleet had been fleeing a force that had already destroyed entire planets. Earth's sensors had not detected it before, but now the signs were clear. The commander realized that while the fleet had been defeated, the danger they had been running from might still be out there, moving toward the systems they had escaped. For the first time, the weight of responsibility pressed on him fully. Every decision in those first hours, the orders to fire, the choice of defense protocols, the activation of the kill zone, had been made with the knowledge available at the time. Yet, hindsight now revealed a more complicated truth. The fleet may have been seeking help or refuge. Humanity had survived, yes, but in doing so, they had destroyed the very beings who could have warned them about a greater threat. The thought was heavy and persistent, settling in his mind like a stone. Despite the growing understanding of the alien story, the world on the surface carried on. People celebrated Earth's victory with quiet relief. There were parades, official recognitions, and speeches praising the courage of the defense teams. Children wore small paper models of the ships and platforms, not knowing the full story behind them. Yet, those in command knew that beneath the celebrations, a deeper challenge remained. Humanity had survived the first encounter, but survival alone was not enough. Knowledge and preparation were critical. The commander began organizing a new initiative. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders from around the world were brought together to analyze every fragment, every map, and every signal recovered from the fleet. They needed to understand the alien technology, the strange radiation, and most importantly, the patterns that might indicate the force that had destroyed the alien home system. This was no longer just a mission of defense. It was a mission of survival for the long-term dot in orbit. Teams worked tirelessly. Broken platforms were repaired where possible, while others were cataloged as lost. The debris of the alien fleet remained scattered in silent orbits, and satellites continued to flicker in and out of contact due to lingering radiation. Engineers monitored energy surges in space, making sure the remaining platforms could function. Every small task felt monumental, but the teams worked with urgency. They knew that Earth's survival depended not just on strength, but on knowledge and foresight. The commander also spoke privately with the surviving crew members from the battle. They were exhausted, some emotionally shaken, but all carried a deep understanding of what had occurred. They shared observations about the alien ships, their precision, their patterns, their reactions to human defense systems. The insights were vital, revealing that the fleet had not been aggressive in the sense humans understood. They had moved with intelligence, almost as if attempting to avoid conflict. The more the commander learned, the more he realized the true tragedy. Earth's defense had succeeded, but it had misunderstood the aliens' intentions. Governments debated how much of the truth to reveal to the public. Some officials argued that revealing the aliens had not been attacking could cause panic or guilt. Others believed that humanity deserved to know, especially if the alien race had been fleeing a force that might threaten Earth in the future. The commander advised caution, but also pushed for transparency among scientific and defense communities. It was crucial that humanity learn from the encounter, not just celebrated survival. Meanwhile, on the surface, people noticed subtle changes in daily life caused by the lingering radiation. Navigation systems experienced delays, satellite TV signals occasionally glitched, and some communication networks faced temporary outages. Scientists explained the radiation was weakening over time, but would take months, possibly years, to fully disappear. These small reminders of the battle above kept people aware that victory had a cost, even if they did not yet understand its full meaning. As the weeks passed, more information emerged from the recovered fragments. Some ships had carried data on the alien civilization's culture, science, and technology. Engineers marveled at the complexity of their designs and the efficiency of their systems. Linguists worked to understand symbols and messages, discovering patterns that hinted at knowledge of forces far beyond human comprehension. Earth had survived the battle, but the fragments revealed a civilization far older, far more experienced in the cosmos than humanity. The commander spent hours each night studying these findings. He realized that humanity's understanding of the galaxy had expanded overnight, not because of diplomacy or exploration, but through a confrontation that had been tragic and necessary. Humanity had survived a great test, but now it faced a new responsibility: to learn, to prepare, and to use this knowledge wisely. Families of lost personnel finally received closure as recovery teams confirmed missing crew members and cataloged those lost in orbit. Grief remained, but communities began to honor their sacrifices. Memorials were built, and stories of bravery were shared. People remembered the battle not only as a moment of fear, but also as a moment of courage, unity, and resilience. The commander looked out over Earth from the command center late one evening, reflecting on everything that had happened. The planet below was quiet, calm, and seemingly safe. Yet, he knew that the universe beyond the solar system was not so forgiving. The alien fleet had been fleeing for a reason. Whatever had destroyed their home system might still be out there. Humanity had survived the first encounter, but the larger challenge was only beginning. With that thought, he began planning the next phase. Earth would rebuild its defenses, strengthen its observation systems, and learn from the alien fragments. Scientists would study the technology and patterns left behind. Engineers would repair and improve satellites and platforms. Humanity would prepare, not just for the unknown, but for the inevitable future, where knowledge and readiness would decide survival. As days turned to weeks, a sense of cautious optimism grew. People learned to adapt to the subtle changes in communication and technology. Students studied the battle as part of history, learning lessons of caution, intelligence, and humility. Engineers and scientists collaborated like never before, driven by the memory of the fleet and the knowledge of what might come next. The commander understood one thing clearly: the battle had ended, but the real challenge was not the fight itself. The real test was preparation, understanding, and foresight. Humanity had survived a storm, but now it had the responsibility to ensure that survival meant more than mere luck. It had to become readiness, wisdom, and resilience. The alien fleet was gone, but their story remained. Their fragments floated in orbit, containing knowledge that could change humanity's understanding of the universe. The commander knew the truth would emerge slowly, piece by piece. And with every discovery, Earth would become stronger, wiser, and more aware of the dangers and wonders beyond its world. Victory had been claimed in a battle of technology and strategy. But the true measure of success would come from how humanity used the lessons learned. Lives had been lost, stations destroyed, and communication disrupted. Yet the story of survival was not just about defense. It was about the ability to learn, adapt,